Welcome back to Homes Explained, and today, rather than profiling one architectural style, we are reviewing a whole architectural movement, one that didn't originate in housing but has started to influence modern home design as interest in the style has recently resurfaced. I'm talking about brutalism, a style once associated with government buildings, universities and public housing, but now making a comeback in modern homes. It's bold, it's raw, and it's often misunderstood. So what exactly is brutalism? And in today's video, that's what we're going to explore. Where did it come from, and why are we suddenly seeing a rise in brutalism in today's homes? Brutalism took shape in the aftermath of World War II, when much of Europe was left scarred from bombing and in urgent need of rebuilding, both quickly and affordably. And in fact, the city that I grew up in, which was Coventry in England, has many brutalist buildings. And that's because it was a car manufacturing centre, but during the war, those plants were turned into ammunition factories, which put a massive target on the city. And of course, it was very heavily bombed. Obviously, the same is true with many cities in Germany and, of course, northern France. When it came to rebuilding, the priority wasn't beauty or nostalgia. It was function, efficiency, speed and shelter. And concrete became the material of choice. It was cheap, durable and could be poured into almost any form. The word brutalism actually comes from the French term béton brut, meaning raw concrete. And what's important to remember is that these buildings, when they were being constructed, weren't part of some exciting new movement with architects and engineers and structural people all getting involved with, but it was just a very practical solution to a massive European problem. Many of the buildings we now call brutalist weren't designed to be part of a defined movement. The term was applied more retrospectively once critics and architects began to recognise the shared traits, and those were exposed concrete, rigid geometry and structural integrity. Public perception at the time was mixed. Some appreciated the modernity and the strength that these buildings symbolised, seen to be solid and robust foundations for a new era for these countries. For others, aesthetics was not the focus. The world was recovering, rebuilding, and architecture was simply seen as a means to an end. The style spread far beyond post-war Britain, and in the Eastern Bloc, brutalism aligned well with the goals of socialist architecture: monumental, uniform and efficient. And even in America, it gained a foothold in civic buildings and universities during the 1960s and 70s. And one of the best-known examples, Boston City Hall, is striking, controversial and divisive to this day. The style of brutalism developed organically, shaped as much by circumstance as it was by intention. Yet over time, this utilitarian solution turned into an aesthetic statement. Architects began to lean into it much more, exaggerating the form and the use of all the raw materials. So let's take a look at some of the key defining features which characterise the brutalist architecture. Number one is the exposed concrete walls. The use of raw, unpainted concrete, béton brut, is the hallmark of brutalist architecture. And you'll often see the imprint of wooden formwork left behind on the surface, giving the walls a textured, almost handcrafted quality. This wasn't an oversight, though. It was intentional, because brutalist architects believed that the materials should speak for themselves. And in fact, the National Theatre in London is a prime example of a building with concrete surfaces that is both really heavy as well as extremely finely detailed, and it catches the light in really dramatic ways. Number two is the monolithic form, and brutalist buildings often appear as if they've been carved from a single block of material. The shapes are massive, solid and uncompromising. These monolithic forms were meant to convey permanence and stability, especially in the post-war era. A striking example is the Geisel Library at the University of California in San Diego. This massive concrete structure flares outward as it rises, creating a very dramatic silhouette that feels almost futuristic, almost as if it's a spaceship made out of stone. Brutalism with ambition and a touch of flair. Number 3 is the blocky or modular repetition, and you'll notice that repetition is key in Brutalist design. You'll often see the same window shape, structural bay or facade element repeated over and over, creating a kind of rhythmic visual pattern. This modular approach wasn't just aesthetic, it made large-scale construction efforts more efficient. And in London's Barbican estates, it showcases this concept of modular repetition with their repeating balconies, creating a kind of vertical texture. The fourth defining feature of Brutalism are the overhangs and cantilevers, with many Brutalist buildings appearing to defy gravity with these overhangs and cantilevered sections. These features also highlight the strength of concrete, which can span wide distances without additional support. At the Orange County Government Centre in New York, projecting volumes jut out at irregular angles, creating deep shadows. The overhangs give the building a fortress-like quality, emphasising its mass and complexity. By contrast, the cultural centre of the Philippines in Manila uses cantilevers in a more refined way. The massive upper level appears to float above the base, creating the illusion of weightlessness, which is a great reminder that Brutalism, for all its heaviness, can also achieve moments of architectural grace and elegance. And finally, the fifth defining feature is the exposed structural system of a Brutalist building, where nothing is hidden, not even the guts of the building. So staircases, piping, ductwork and support systems are all visible, often celebrated as part of the design. At the University of East Anglia in England, the terraced concrete ziggurat buildings boldly reveal their structural systems, almost like architectural diagrams turned inside out. Brutalist interiors often echoed the exterior with raw concrete surfaces, exposed structural systems, and a stark utilitarian feel. Decoration was minimal and finishes were industrial. Think open staircases, visible ductwork, and built-in concrete shelving or seating. The spaces certainly prioritised function over comfort, though in later examples, softer materials such as wood or textiles were brought in to balance the austerity. For a long time, Brutalism was seen as cold, ugly, and even oppressive. Many buildings fell into disrepair or were torn down altogether. But in recent years, there's been a noticeable shift. What was once widely rejected is now being re-evaluated, even embraced. So what changed? Part of it is visual fatigue. In an age of glassy high-rises and overly polished minimalism, Brutalism offers something very different, something with texture, presence, boldness and weight. But there's also a growing appreciation for the craftsmanship and structural daring behind many of these buildings. And when done well, Brutalism doesn't feel unfinished, it feels intentional. And we're not just seeing this revival in preservation efforts. Brutalist principles are showing up in modern residential design too, from custom homes to luxury real estate. In Malibu, Beyoncé and Jay-Z famously purchased a very striking concrete home with a minimalist sculptural design that very much channels Brutalist DNA while updating it for a contemporary and no doubt high-end lifestyle. Today's new Brutalism often uses warmer tones and smoother finishes, but still celebrates mass, form, and honest raw materials. This style is especially popular in Australia and Japan, where it's often reinterpreted through a softer, more serene lens. Whether through high-profile homes, architectural coffee table books, or curated Instagram accounts, Brutalism seems to have found itself a new audience, one that sees past the concrete and into the character. Thanks for watching this deep dive into Brutalism, and I'll see you next week for more Homes Explained.